Christmas Eve, but we're still talking cards because we owe an episode. It's been a little bit of a layoff, a little bit of traveling, and we wanted to squeeze one more in before it's time to get to the family. But Merry Christmas Eve to those of you who are watching. If you're watching after Christmas, then I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching during Christmas, I hope we are a good distraction from the craziness of family. I'm ready to tune into some YouTube videos once I get a little bit exhausted. But T, you had a long day with the family. You showed me the kids were really amped up to kind of go and see the Christmas lights. You're in the spirit. You're full dad mode right now. But thanks for hopping on and taking some time to talk a little bit about some baseball cards.
Absolutely. It's a nice break from the dad activities that I've been assigned to over the past couple of days. But of course, that's a lot of fun. I mean, you're watching your kids kind of experience the joy of Christmas. It's a blast. But love talking cards, so love doing this. Ready to roll.
And soon enough, they'll be enjoying even more so the baseball card side of things. Have the kids started to get into it at all yet? I mean, how old are each of your kids?
7, 5, and 3, all boys. So the oldest, the 7-year-old, is deep into it. He's got his box already.
I was into it at that age. It was over. My dad knew he was screwed.
Yeah, they're sorted. He's got his favorites. He's got stands on his desk where he displays all his cards. And
love it.
Oh, he's loving it. So he's deep into it. And the other one is kind of getting into Pokemon a little bit, which I know nothing about. But
big money in that too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right. So no, we're a card family.
And, we're going to talk about a little bit of everything today. I wanted to touch a little bit on the Hall of Fame just because we're getting a little bit closer. We've got more ballots trickling in, but also on justbaseball.com, we're doing a lot of the case verdicts kind of, and assessing each guy on the ballot. Some don't have a prayer, but we're giving everybody on the ballot an opportunity to get a little bit of limelight because you know what? They all had great careers, and we want to kind of reflect on their careers now 5 years after they retired, like the Tim Hudsons of the world and some of those guys. Nothing's going to change for them in terms of their card prices, most likely. But what we're looking at is the players that are on the edge and can get pushed over. When it's the obvious players that everybody knows was going to get in the Hall of Fame, the card value jump is typically a temporary bump, and then it goes back down to normal because everybody already considered that guy a Hall of Famer. Where we're interested is, aside from the PED guys, because that's even a more nuanced discussion, and we can't even really speculate as much on that because we don't even know what the set of rules are, right? Like we're creating a hierarchy of cheating to determine who should get in or who can't. That's not our problem right now. What we are going to talk about, though, is Scott Rowland, because I just wrote something about Scott Rowland today. And the more I dive into Scott Rowland, but I played third base my whole life, so I always loved him as a player growing up. But, I don't really think I had the cumulative idea of, like, by the end, what his career was like in terms of stacking up to some other Hall of Famers. Now that I'm covering baseball and been doing it for a while, I really dove into it, and he's a Hall of Famer. I don't know how you feel about it, if I have to sell you on it, but to me, he's a Hall of Famer. I'll go through a couple of quick stats, but you obviously watched him, since he came up. I was born the year he came up, but he had such a long career. I really enjoyed him on the back half too. He was consistent all the way through. But I mean, this guy's got to be in Cooperstown. I don't think it's going to be this year, but he's got to make it eventually, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it may take a couple tries, but Scott Rowland is looking at a plaque, a bust, and so he's going to be in the Hall of Fame eventually. And like that article that you put out today or yesterday. I think you kind of laid it all out there and made a good case for it. So, what's kind of interesting about Scott, I think, is where his his cards are priced in comparison to a guy like David Ortiz, which was something that I kind of found interesting. And maybe we get to that later, but maybe we need to hear a little bit more about just the case for Scott in case, people might, see it otherwise.
Yeah. So here's my thing is because, Scott Rowland doesn't light up the stat sheet in terms of when you look at the baseball reference page, there's nothing that jumps off the page. When you watch him on the field, I mean, he was a slick defender, won 8 Gold Gloves, but overall, I mean, that's not really what people are clamoring for to line up and buy cards, right? You're going to get David Ortiz because he's Big Papi, who's clutch. He's
Yeah.
has the incredible personality, the big hits. He represents an entire city basically. He's just an icon. But it gets to a certain point where Hall of Famers are Hall of Famers, right? And when I grew up collecting, I've always been into vintage cards, and my dad wanted to collect every Hall of Famer. Once a guy's in the Hall, his card is pretty much set in stone at a baseline and will continue to appreciate almost like a mutual fund as it gets older and older and more scarce and more scarce. Because there's guys that I have in my safe of all of the Hall of Famers that are some of them are pretty boring players, right? I mean, like even Brooks Robinson, like such an incredible defender, but the best defender maybe ever to play in the infield, especially. But I feel like if he was playing in the modern era, racks up the 14 gold gloves or 16, whatever it was, like are people lining up for that card? Nolan Arenado is kind of on track to be close to that. He's already got 9 of his own with many years left in the tank. Are people lining up for Nolan Arenado's card? So when I look at Scott Rowland, I feel like it's more so just playing into the fact that we think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. And I think it's more of a matter of when. And the one stat that really stood out to me is you look at WAR, wins above replacement. There's not a single player that played third base with a WAR of 70 or above that isn't in the Hall, except for Adrian Beltre, who will be a first ballot guy. Another really important stat to me was, you look at all these cumulative thresholds, like 500 home runs, this and that. I think you got to take it more holistically, right? He was a guy that hit 300 home runs and had 2,000 hits. 96 players in MLB history did that. So, I mean, that's still not a big number, but that's not Hall of Fame worthy, right? A lot of those players in the 96 total did not make the Hall of Fame. When you filter that by guys who won 8 or more gold gloves, the list shrinks to 6. And 5 of those 6 are Hall of Famers. So when I look at it from that component, I'm like, okay, this guy has to be in because he does it all. He checks every single box.
Yeah. Those are great points. Those are phenomenal numbers. Who are the other 5? Do you have those handy?
Yeah. So it was Cal Ripken. Sorry. I actually filtered it by, so the gold gloves was the same number of people, but this specific list that I filtered it by on the article was actually by 20 defensive WAR or higher, which I thought was even more interesting because this filtered it across every position. So now you're looking at like shortstops, you're looking at everybody all over the map. And this list, I'm pulling it up right now, is pretty insane. When you look at it, it's Cal Ripken as number 1, Adrian Beltre, number 2, who's about to be in the Hall of Fame, Gary Carter, Pudge Rodriguez, Greg Nettles is the only guy who's not in the Hall and probably has a case, and then Scott Rowland. So those are the only players with a defensive WAR of 20 or above, and those other statistical thresholds of 300 home runs and 2,000 hits. I think that's pretty outrageous.
Yeah, that is. It sounds like Scott is definitely on the path to the Hall of Fame. I was looking at some of his cards, and what kind of surprised me, I guess it didn't really surprise me, were some price points. And so let me kind of read off to you what I found.
I'm listening.
And you can tell me.
I had to mute my TV. My mom, we got like the master TV, same cable box. And I'm like hearing noise in the corner. I'm like, oh no, TV's going to go blaring, but keep rocking. Let's go.
All right. So basically the card that you want of Scott Rowland's is 1995 Bowman's Best blue rookie card. So it's kind of like got this silver top to it and like a blue base to it. And you can get like a raw version of that for about $40. There's a refractor version of that for about 150-ish, maybe even up to 200. The PSA 9 version is 130, and then the PSA 10 is between $400 to $500. So $400 to $500 gets you a PSA 10 Bowman's Best rookie card of Scott Rowland. Are you buying that? Or you have any interest in that? Is that too high?
I'm glad that you asked that question as to like whether it's worth it or not. For me, it's worth it because I think he's a Hall of Famer. And $500 for a PSA 10 of a Hall of Famer and a unique card at that, I'm in because I just think it's going to appreciate. But this is where it's more difficult because most of the other Hall of Famers we're looking at, it's pretty simple when you want to get their card, right? You just get their Topps rookie or you get their Bowman rookie from the 50s or 60s or whatever it may be. You just get the first year player card because there were no prospect cards. When you get to the 90s, 2000s, it's kind of a crapshoot as to whether they had cards made for them or not. mean, you look at Albert Pujols's of the world, like he has a Bowman card. He's a little bit after, and I don't really know the nuance of that. But what is tough is like, okay, I want to go buy Scott Rowland. How do I know which card to buy? How do I know which makes the most sense, and what is the one that everybody's going to be after when he starts to pick up some steam and maybe ends up in the Hall of Fame, or 20 years, 30 years from now when he's solidified in the Hall of Fame for a while and people look at him as a top 10 third baseman ever. Then at what point, what are you looking for card wise instead of just that traditional rookie?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple ways. I think the first way is what I would do, and I would go onto eBay and I would just look at recent sales, and I would look at the cards that kind of sold for the most and the cards that actually sold the most. So like you're looking at volume, you're looking at prices, and that'll give you a good indication of like which card is the card. And then there are some, like, I know that Beckett puts out stuff. There's other like sites that will put out like, here is David Ortiz's top 10 cards, Derek Jeter's top 10 cards. And you can go through and look at kind of which ones are the most iconic and probably the ones that you've already seen that maybe you just don't remember. And they do a great job of just kind of explaining like, hey, this one is the one that's most sought after. This is the reason why. It's maybe a little bit more rare. It may be a parallel. Like they do there's a lot of stuff, especially on these bigger name players, that you can find top 10 lists pretty easily. So, you wouldn't think about it, but like Ortiz, again, I'm talking about him a lot, but Ortiz is like top card is a 1997 Fleer rookie card where it didn't even have like his last, like it wasn't David Ortiz, it was David Arias, right? I think that's like what it was initially.
Yeah.
And so, like that, it takes a little digging, but again, like you can find resources that will point you in the right direction. So there's a couple different ways to get to that.
And would you say Rowland for you is a buy, right? Like, would you agree with that? I don't think the card's going to spike in value. He's probably going to come up just short as I'm looking at it. He's already gained a handful of votes. He was at 52.9% before. But again, when you're in a group of players, just to like rehash the stat, defensive WAR 20 or above, 300 home runs and 2,000 hits. When you're in a group with Cal Ripken, Adrian Beltre, Gary Carter, Pudge Rodriguez, and then Greg Nettles, who was no slouch himself, and he was like a 250 hitter. That's the only reason why he wasn't in there. I mean, you got to assume he's getting in. I just think it's going to be one of those things that it's going to take time. But, once a Hall of Famer is 20 years in there, 30 years into the Hall of Fame, then you're looking at it. No one's really thinking about how flashy the guy was at that point.
Sure.
He's just a guy on the Hall of Fame checklist that you want to add to your collection, just like my dad always did. I mean, I go through some of the Hall of Fame players that I have in the collection that my dad accumulated, and I haven't heard of some of them. And I'm like, I'm not a baseball historian, but I consider myself pretty well versed on the history of baseball and all the names. And I mean, there's so many there. It's just too many. So I think that there's going to be that kind of general intrigue. But on the Ortiz side, to wrap a bow on this, pseudo Hall of Fame conversation, Ortiz looks like he's being regarded differently than the others who had ties to PEDs, which understandably so. I mean, we said earlier on, we're not going to try and get into like the hierarchy of lying, but there's a difference between testing positive and getting suspended and being implicated to it and never really having true corroboration of that implication. So I think a lot of writers are saying, hey, it's plausible deniability. We love Poppy. He was a big figure within the game, transcended the game, and was clutch. And of course, the numbers meet everything as well. That's a guy that looks like he's going to get in. It might not be this year, but it looks like even if he doesn't get in this year, he'll be really close. Are card values reflecting him already being considered a Hall of Famer in your eyes? It sounds like they kind of are. Well,
yeah. Quite interestingly, I think Rowland and Ortiz are priced pretty similarly. So like, again, and one quick thing, I wanted to say this really quickly about Scott's cards before we moved on to Ortiz. It's like, if you can't go out and buy a $400 to $500 card, a PSA 10, go buy a $40 raw card, just to have it, like to have a, you can go out there and buy the same exact card. It's not going to be graded. It could be in rough shape, but it could be, I mean, you've got you can always contact the guy, the seller, and find a really good version of that card. But go out and buy a $40 card and stash it. But you don't always have to go for the $400 to $500 option. But both Ortiz and Rowland are right in that range. What I found to be interesting is when I kind of started looking at this Hall of Fame class and their cards, kind of end of October when Hall of Fame talk started picking up. Ortiz's 1997 Fleer rookie was going for mid fives. I think the one I just remember off the top of my head was it's like $560 in late October. That price is already dropped about $100, which I found kind of interesting. Like you think, like he's been talked about so much in the baseball world because of what's going on with the Hall that like maybe, that would have drawn in a few more eyeballs to his cards. That would have you would have seen the prices even go up a little bit. But his cards are holding steady and even kind of like dropping a little bit. So I think both of them, if you want to go ahead and get that PSA 10 version in that $400 to $500 range and just stash it, it's a long play, of course. And it's not like you said, this is like a mutual fund. It's going to go up 5, 6, 7, 8% a year, but it's probably going to be steady. You buy it now, you stash it, and then you hope, 10 years, 20 years down the road, maybe even when you're passing your collection on, that it's gone up quite a bit in value. So I think it's a buy right now. I think both those guys are buys right now. And I think, you're getting to the point where you're buying almost a little bit of history. You're buying a card of a guy that has a significant place in the game and will forever hold that place. So, those cards don't lose value.
No, especially with a lot of what Ortiz represented in Boston and a lot of the issues that they had through the years of not being able to win and, finally getting across. And a lot of that was his clutch hits. And then Rowland, I think Rowland, the longevity also in that baseball community in St. Louis, where he played a lot of his career, those communities alone, St. Louis and Boston, can alter a card value through their demand as is. And I think those are two guys that are always going to be very embraced by their communities, no matter what. And two guys that I think we're betting on getting into the Hall. So,
and one more thing, Rowland, there aren't a lot of cards for sale. So take that into consideration. I looked at Rowland stuff and there's not a lot out there.
There's not,
I'm in the Twitter marketplace a lot, and Rowland doesn't roll across my timeline hardly ever. So if you see a good deal on one of his cards, and same with Big Poppy's, take it, go ahead and buy it.
I'm with you 100%. And I think the reason why we saw the Big Poppy card slide a little bit is you see a lot of these early ballots come in and there's some guys going nobody. They're just voting nobody on the ballot. And I'm not a big fan of that. But imagine you have a lot of money invested into David Ortiz, and you see a couple ballots with nobody there, and then you see a few more with no PED guys. You're probably, I'm not saying you're dumping it, but you're probably skimming a little off the top. You're probably like,
you're a little nervous.
I don't know about that. But Ortiz, the difference is he's got 10 years on the ballot. Bonds, I don't think he's going to get in, and that's where I have a bunch of Bonds cards still at PSA that I submitted a year ago that I'm like, I'm not going to get him until he's off the ballot. And now I'm kind of freaking out. I'm like, I kind of want to keep some because he's very freaking Bonds, but I want to sell some now, and I want to buy some prospects because we're going to talk about our 3 buys in a little bit. Like I want to put money towards buying more of those guys and hold on to a few of the Bondses. But I came across a collection, bought out a guy's collection as he was moving and just wanted to empty out the garage. And there was a bunch of 86, 87, and a lot of Bonds. So I want to be able to translate that into some other players, maybe even some Rowland. But right now I'm just waiting on PSA. So, maybe my kid will get it after I'll put it in the will. If the cards ever come from PSA, they go to my son. But
they did release a statement yesterday or 2 days ago. Maybe it was the 21st. They said that they expect their their value option to return middle of 2022. So they've returned their normal option, as we talked about, at $100. Now they expect their value option to return middle of 2022, which is fantastic news.
Is that like economy on a flight where you don't get a bag, you don't even get
Yeah.
to pick your seat, and they might even bump you off it if they oversell it because you didn't have an assigned seat? Is that what this is basically going to be?
It's just going to be like the turnaround times are going to be extremely, extremely lengthy. But on stuff like this, like I have some stuff right now that I'm not looking to flip. And so I got a stack of stuff that I'm okay with sending them off to PSA come July and not getting them back for a year, because they're younger guys, or even they're guys that are like, they're older guys that like, I mean, if I had a bunch of Rowlands raw right now, I mean, why not just wait till July when you can pay, $25 a card? And who cares if they're gone for a year and a half? You're not trying to flip those.
Exactly.
But anyway, I derailed us a little bit there.
No, that's what I do with my Jeters, and I'm happy with that, because I'm like, yeah, whenever they come, they come. But that's one that I'm excited to just have those, and we'll sell one or two maybe. I like keeping them, but it's only when I see an opportunistic buy, and that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a little bit. But before we get to that, there was an interesting proposition you brought up, even though I think we're kind of on the same page here, but it will be interesting as you contextualize it with the prices. A classic lefty outfielder versus lefty outfielder. And they are similar in their profiles, honestly. Obviously, long way to go for Jared Kelenic, but Jared Kelenic versus Kyle Tucker. And we have short memories, but when Kyle Tucker first came up, he had some struggles too. And now Kyle Tucker is a dude. Like, he's that dude. And Jared Kelenic finished the season really strong. We've talked about him a little bit because of the card I pulled. And, that one took a while to even come from Topps in the redemption. But finally got that one. And, I was like, what do I do with it? And we kind of said, yeah, hold it. And I think that was the right call. When we're looking at this kind of breakdown here, who is the better buy? I want to hear your breakdown on the numbers, then I'll give my thoughts, because I know people see the recent struggles of Kelenic despite the strong finish, and they're like, oh, I'll just go get the sure thing. But if there's a big price difference, like, remember, Kyle Tucker had the same struggles out of the gate, and Jared Kelenic, I think was even younger at the time he came up, or it was probably about the same. So these are very similar cases.
Yeah, I think they actually came up like their first year. They're the same age in their first year. Now, Tucker had like his first 3 years, he didn't have as many plate appearances as Kelenic did in his first year, which is kind of interesting. You go back and compare the two players. But Kelenic is so hot right now. Like, his card prices are just nutty, and they are like, you put a Kelenic card, on your Twitter timeline or your Instagram feed, and that thing is gone. Like,
Really,
people are just snatching Kelenic up left and right. So one of the top, obviously, rookie cards in this past year that you could snag is a Kelenic card. So, but what I found interesting is I'm a huge Kyle Tucker fan. Just love the way he plays, love his swing, love his ability. I think he's going to be just, again, we've talked about him on the show. I think I'm just trying to buy as much as I can. And his stats bear it out. The guy is just a freak, in my opinion. But I bought recently 2 of Tucker's Bowman First Chrome Greens, so out of 99. And I was looking around and again looking at just different cards, and Kelenic, same exact card, came across my timeline. And I bought Tucker's for 80 and Kelenic's for I didn't buy it. Sorry. I saw Kelenic's for 200. And the one I bought at 80 of Tucker's was pristine. Like, I had the guy like send me really detailed pictures. The centering's great. It's going to grade out really well. I'm really excited about it. But Tucker's for 80 and Kelenic's was going for 200. I'm not like, give me give me another Tucker. Give me another, like, give me something else. Give me like 3 Tuckers for 1 Kelenic. I think that's nuts. Like, I'm just, what Tucker has already shown us. I just don't see how there could be that big of a price disparity. Maybe you've looked at these guys closer, you know a little bit more about their history as prospects than I do, but am I crazy for seeing it the way I'm seeing it, or what are your
No,
thoughts?
it's pretty wild to me because, you look at the markets, it's not like Kelnic's a Dodgers or Yankees prospect or even a Red Sox prospect. Like, this is a guy that's playing in Seattle, which I do think is going to be one of, the more fun teams in baseball over the next decade. But it's still Seattle. And in Houston, it's not as big of a market as some may think. And, it's not really a baseball town, even though they've had a lot of success as of late. I'm very surprised by that. And I think some of it is people kind of piling in because they think that they're getting in on something that maybe not everybody else is thinking about, right? It's like when you bet on the obvious, when the 14th ranked basketball team is playing an unranked team, and the unranked team is the 3-point favorite, and everybody's like, oh, let me go bet the 14th ranked team at +3. That's easy money. And they lose. They always lose. It's the biggest trap ever. Like, and everybody thinks that they have like some edge, or, when a team, unfortunately, is beaten up by COVID and they don't have their QB, and you're like, oh, the Ravens are screwed. They're going to get blown out because, their whole team's done, and Lamar Jackson's hurt, and everybody's piling on top of that. And you don't think everybody's thought about that? Like, I think Jared Kelenic is the exact example of that, because we did see the card dip, and then he had a Jared Kelenic month. Like, I don't think people realize like that it is very obvious how good he was in the final month, helping his team down a playoff stretch and almost sent them to the playoffs. It almost played a big part in it. Yes, he was miserable before that, but in September and October, these were meaningful baseball games. 248, 331, 524 slash line. That's an 854 OPS for a rookie in meaningful games. 135 WRC plus. That's 35% above average for basically an offensive rating, if you want to call it that, for those who may not be familiar. He hit 7 home runs in that month. I mean, he figured it out. I'm venturing to say he figured it out. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, you look at his stat line for the season, this is still a good time to buy because I know he was good at the end and he's going to keep it going. I think everybody's on the same page on that one. And I think the price reflects that. So that's not to say that Kelenic isn't a good, I guess he's a hold, I guess, right? Whereas I look at Kyle Tucker, you're hoping still at this point that Jared Kelenick's going to beat Kyle Tucker. Like, Kyle Tucker is already an all-star, and I think he's going to keep getting better. To me, that is the guy I want to target right now. A young player still who is already proven as an all-star, and he's not maxed out, right? Like, he is getting better and better. The strikeout rate's dwindling. The walk rates are rising. He's hitting the ball harder. He's becoming, I think, the guy in Houston. As Altuve ages, Correa departs, Springer's gone. He's going to be their franchise cornerstone out there. That matters too. I'm leaning Kyle Tucker. I'm holding.
Yeah, I think we're on this.
Yeah, I'm holding on Kelenic, but I'm buying Tucker.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here. I was just kind of blown away when I saw that. I just, like, to me, Kyle Tucker is, I don't know. I feel like I sing his praises too much, but I mean, I'm just in love with the guy and his ability, his swing again, and like to snag. I basically got 2 of his greens and 2 sky blues for the cost of 1 Kelenic green.
So for context, for some viewers out there, what would Kelenick's card in the prospect world, right? The current prospect world, even though Kelenic graduated, what would that compare to off the top? Like, how much less is that than a Bobby Witt or a Julio Rodriguez? Or am I thinking too high there? Do I need to go like a little bit down? How much more is his card than a CJ Abrams? Or
yeah, so if you could get you can get a Wander Franco Bowman Chrome first PSA 10 for about $185.
And Jared Kelenic is what?
Well, it's a green, so it's out of 99. So if it graded out of 10, it'd be worth a lot more.
So what's a base card? Is that too much on the fly here that I'm picking you up on? If so, no worries. But I was thinking about it. Like, what is that? Where does that stack him in terms of the other prospects? Right? Like he's already shown some success at the big league level, but where is that price comparing to?
Are you talking about which card specifically?
Auto, like a base auto.
A base Kelenic auto.
Yeah, PSA 10.
I can look it up really quick and kind of give you a better idea.
Yeah. I'll kind of elaborate a bit more on why I'm saying this as you look it up, because what I'm trying to ask here is that he showed success at the big league level in that final month. That's extremely valuable. But if he's already priced above guys who, I think could be as good, if not better, and I can get in at about 30%, 40% discount, why wouldn't I? And I'm talking, I doubt he's more expensive than Bobby Witt, right? Like there's no way. But what about like a CJ Abrams or some of these other guys? Like, where is the price difference?
Yeah, I would have to, and I have all that in a spreadsheet, and
well, that's good. We're going to stow this one away for next episode, because this is something I really want to harp on, is like first year players and top prospects. Yes, you saw a little bit, but if you're really confident in the prospect, at what point is it a good buy, right? Like the first year player with a little bit of proven success should be more expensive. But if I'm getting a 30% discount on a prospect I'm extremely confident in, that might be worth it for me. Wander's an exception, because Wander already showed that he could be like an MVP candidate next year. But Kelenic compared to Julio, for example, I'd rather buy Julio just because I think his upside, he has more upside, and I think he could hit the ground running. Whereas, Kelenic, it's a little bit of a struggle, finished really strong, and we'll see how he comes back out next year. I think he's going to be great, but I think Julio has a different kind of ceiling. So I think it's interesting trying to compare those two and looking at it from there. But I think we kind of agree here that Tucker's the obvious buy, because he's still not maxed out. Like Tucker can still continue to get better and better and better. Still extremely young, and just had, I think, what was the best season of his career, and what was another really, really good year for the Astros that wouldn't have made it as far as they did without him. And remember, he'll be 25 years old after this month, or after next month, that is. Like there's prospects that are that old. Like this guy is still a kid and is going to get only better and better.
So just for reference, Kelenic, these are asking prices, which don't really mean a whole, well, they do mean some, but Kelenic right now, if a PSA 10 Bowman Chrome first auto, people are asking around $1,000. And so if you were to look at a J-Rod or a Bobby Witt, those asking prices jump to like $2,500 to $3,000. Yeah.
Okay, well then that kind of puts things in perspective there, right?
Yeah.
That makes Kyle Tucker even more of a buy, and I think that kind of tells you J-Rod, don't go there. Like it's too late. That ship has sailed. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hope you pull something, because that ship has sailed. You can get 2 Kelenics for that. Like, yeah, I said I'd rather have J-Rod, but give me 2.5 Kelenics at that point.
And then you can get, listen to this, a PSA 10 Kyle Tucker Bowman Chrome first auto for $500. So you could literally get 6 Kyle Tuckers for the price of 1 J-Rod right now.
Dude, and here's the thing. I think part of the reason why Kyle Tucker is underpriced is this. Guy comes up in 2018, struggles. Comes back up in 2019, late in the season. That team was loaded, right? Was playing a little bit of a part down the stretch, but he only had 22 games under his belt there. Shortened 2020 season that just didn't give us an opportunity to see much. So at that point, like up until this year, we knew what Kyle Tucker could be, but it's not like he was doing what he did last year. Last year was his real coming out party. And I don't know if enough people are really paying attention to that, because he kind of fell off the prospect rankings because he graduated, right? When you are in the big leagues for parts of 2 different seasons, you graduate. So in 2020, he graduates from the prospect list. People are looking for their next investment. They're looking at the prospect list. Kyle Tucker's not on there. They're looking to invest in big league players. They're going for the superstars that have been really mashing, that are still young. Kyle Tucker's not one of those guys either. I think he was really caught in limbo, and that's part of the reason why we haven't seen the demand quite catch up. I'm willing to bet that's going to change, because this guy, look, when it's all said and done, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a Hall of Famer. And I think obviously he's got a long way to go, but he is starting that ability to kind of go down that trajectory. We don't see guys hitting 30 home runs and striking out less than 16% of the time.
Right. Yeah.
You just don't see that anymore. And you pair speed with that and an ability to walk and just extremely high contact rates. Yeah, sell me on this guy every day of the week. And he's actually got a pretty funny personality too. He's starting to get more comfortable in press conferences. He's pretty funny. And I think he's starting to loosen up there. And so this is a no doubt buy for me times a million moving forward. Any final thoughts you have on him before we move on to a little bit of more heated
nothing on him, but like, I think it kind of lends itself to maybe this is another episode altogether, but again, it's like kind of what you just said. Once people leave the prospect world, they enter into, it's almost like a completely different market for cards. And we've had this conversation, off air before, but like, maybe like we need to start talking about these market, like in separate ways, or prices in separate ways. Like maybe
totally agree.
$500 for a third year big leaguer, or fourth year big leaguer, like Kyle Tucker is insanely expensive, like maybe it's in comparison to like asking 3,000 for J-Rod.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. I just like you said, he kind of left the prospect world, and then all of a sudden, like he's just another guy in a lot of people's eyes, because that potential to be just an insane dude right when he comes out is, and he struggled too. And so like,
and he's overshadowed by like George Springer,
right,
Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Altuve. I mean, like that's a team that just has so many guys that no one's really thinking about Kyle Tucker.
Right.
And the guy hit 7th this year. It's not going to be that way next year. I can promise you that. But I think that's a really good point. And I'm excited we're going to do a 2-part episode next time on international free agency and how deceiving it is to not only card collectors, but also the prospect industry as a whole. Because I'm seeing how rankings are so messed up based on that. Guys that got big bonuses, we're almost overlooking their shortcomings because we think, oh, he got a big bonus. But to get that bonus, it was all based on projection and guesses anyways. Most of those teams never saw that guy play on a real field or really anywhere outside of a showcase setting. Of course, there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, that's true. I'm really interested in exploring this a bit further and unpacking that a bit more on the side of the big league market and the prospect market, because prospecting has really kind of kicked it into another gear over the last couple of years. So we don't really have a comparison. Like when Kyle Tucker's Bowman Chrome came out in 2016, yes, a lot of the people watching this were like, oh, well, I was into it. Yeah, of course you were. So were we. But there weren't as many just casual fans buying Bowman Chrome Auto like they are now. And that's why we kind of see a disproportionate market. And yeah, you almost got to treat it like two different markets here. But it doesn't mean it's not a good buy. It just means that the fact that he's a sixth of the price of Julio Rodriguez doesn't mean that you should dump $1 million, into Kyle Tucker and expect to see that 6x return. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And I'm excited to unpack all of that as well. On a little bit of the international free agent point, I know you wanted to talk about this before we get into our 3 buys each to close out. Jason Dominguez. So I'm working on my top 100 prospect list update for justbaseball.com. And we are going to have that update out probably in the next few weeks. Obviously, I put a lot of time into doing pretty detailed write-ups on all of these guys. Of course, when I'm doing write-ups on a lot of these prospects, I think about the cards too. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a guy that and I'll get to that when I get to my buys. I'm watching more of this guy. I'm looking more at the data. I'm watching video. I'm talking to players that have faced him, and it all checks out. And I'm like, okay, there's a guy I got to buy. Not only am I putting him up on the prospect list, but this guy I got to buy. That wasn't the case for me with Jason Dominguez. And that's not to say that he's doomed by any means. But the price is outrageous. Everybody knows that.
It's outrageous.
Yes. It's crazy. And my issue is this. I think, you are, and I'll let you kind of, explain it in your way, but the way I kind of interpret it is like, Aram, what you are saying is fair and has merit, but you are being very harsh on this guy, and like he still has a lot of the tools that everybody likes. And I kind of understand that. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on how I feel about Dominguez, because we talk about a hold. Like I think Julio Rodriguez is a superstar in the making, and his price is still, or his card is still overpriced. I'm calling it a hold because I think he's a superstar in the making. Dominguez to me is a sell. If every time I pull a Jason Dominguez, I instantly list it. I think if I wait any longer, people are going to start coming around to the fact that he is extremely volatile and may not pan out. Is that?
I don't think that people are coming around to that at all. Like
Are they really not?
I see Dominguez product all the time, and people drool over it. And he's still like, people are buying him at exorbitant prices.
It's crazy to hear them.
Well, okay. I don't like, from a card buying perspective, I'm not rushing out to buy Jason Dominguez, but I'm also not like, I'm not like, this guy's a sell. He's going to be a bust. You know, flip him or turn him as soon as you get him type of guy. So I think that's where we may not see eye to eye. I think Jason he's just so young. Like, he just hasn't, like, he missed a whole year of development in 2020. He's still 19 years old. I mean, he hasn't had a ton of plate appearances. No. In the little bit of time that he had. I mean, yeah, he's had some time in the complex league, and then what was it, low A?
Yeah, I saw him in low A.
And so
I was so excited. And then
there's just a part of me that's like, I like his build. I think he's built well. Like, he's fast. Like, he's got good pop. Like, I think I'm not like super in love with his swing. It looks a little hitchy. Like, there's some extra hand movement there that I don't like. Yeah, but I'm not a scout. Like, you don't listen to what I say about that. But like, you've got guys that are deep into this game. You know, Yankee scouts that have been doing it for 40, 50 years, heaping massive amounts of praise on this guy. And yeah, maybe they're, you know, technically paid to say that. But at the same time, like, these guys have put their eyes on a lot of ball players. And they are saying things about Jason that are pretty high praise. So no, totally. I'm just willing to like give him a couple more years.
Totally.
And so I'm okay holding his stuff. Now, you may be left holding a pretty big bag. But at the same time, like, with where everybody's projecting this guy to be, yeah, he had a very average year last year, if you look at his numbers. But it was minimal. He's young. He's still gonna grow a little bit. I think he has a chance to still turn into that player everybody expects him to be.
Yeah, and I think that's all really, really good points. And you know, I think some of it's kind of just me overreacting to the overreaction, right? Because I see people so far the other way. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they are. They think he's the next coming, you know, like the second coming of, you know, whoever. But I mean,
they call him the Martian. Here's my thing with Dominguez, that, you know, and I think you bring up a ton of really good points. The guy has all the potential in the world. My issue with him is this, and it's more so from like the investment standpoint. If I pull his card, I see what he's going for right now. And there's no prospect, in my opinion, that has there's no prospect that's priced at that high, in my opinion, that like relative to what his potential is and what he's proven, right? Like, you look at even some of the other big lottery ticket prospects that I think have just as much upside. They're not going for a fraction of that. And that's why I'm like, I can sell this and I can reinvest it elsewhere. And that's the way I look at it. I'm like, how much more run does this have? How much more run does Jason Dominguez have? Like, his green shimmer just sold out of 99. It was a PSA 10 for $3,000. So that was going for a lot more before. It's let out a little bit of steam. But here, how about this? His base auto, Bowman Chrome base auto, PSA 10, $1,350.
Yeah,
I would rather put that money in a lot of other spots. And my reasoning is this. Yes, he's got all the tools, but when he was signed, we had never seen, and Yankee scouts had never really seen him play on a baseball field in a competitive environment. They threw $5 million at a kid who was a switch hitter that was built like the Hulk, has a plus arm, and supposedly posted plus running speeds. What I saw when I saw him play, I saw the kid built like the Hulk. I mean, he flicked a home run out of there. I mean, he hit a bomb. The swing, like you said, it's got some movement. There's some inconsistencies with it. I'm not as worried about that. Like, he'll iron that out, I think. He's a teenager. He was 3 for 52 against breaking balls. Bit concerning. I think he can iron it out. But this is not a guy that's in the same conversation as Wander Franco when he was 19, or even in the same conversation as Julio Rodriguez when he was 19. So why are the prices kind of reflecting that he is? The other thing is that we haven't really seen a guy with this build succeed in baseball. Like, he looks like Tim Tebow. He's so stiff. He's crowded. It doesn't look great. Again, he might make it work, but there's questions. And if I'm putting this much money into a player or holding this much money in a player, I want as few questions as possible. And I know that you got to take some chances. I just think there's better chances to be taken. And that's kind of my more tame perspective on it. But I'm still selling instantly. If I pull a Jason Dominguez out of 10, let's say, I can promise you before I even text you that I got that, because you'd be the first person I text, it'd already be for sale on eBay. I'm telling you that right now.
I hate that you're giving the viewers the tame version, because I know how you really feel. I'm ready for you to unleash. But
okay,
I think what you're saying, you're making a lot of really good points about him, especially like I love the point about like you want as few question marks as possible if you're going to dump $1,500 into a guy, a 19-year-old.
3 for 52 against breaking balls. I know he's 19. I know he's in rookie ball. Wander Franco was hitting 330 in high A, and like I know that he had some development delay and all that stuff. I watched him in center, dude. He sucks in center field. Like, he's bad out there. I'll send you a video of one of his reads that I got out there. But
that's going to be the title of this episode. Jason Dominguez sucks
in center. But and also it takes him like a good. He runs almost like Scooby-Doo. Like, it takes him a good 5 seconds to get going. There's like just
Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, Fred Flintstone's the better one. Like, I get he has all these tools, but I don't even know if these tools translate into baseball. They may translate better to playing middle linebacker for the Green Bay Packers. Like, I just don't know if he is a baseball player. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave it at. And I think I gave you a little bit more of a harsher,
I love it,
less tame version of it. But, look, I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he's a superstar. Like, that's the thing that I think I always try to make clear when I'm doing my prospect show. So I'm being harsh on a guy. Like, I don't want him to not succeed. Like, it's his career. It's his life. It's one take from me. I am more than happy to look like a bozo and have this guy make $300 million for his family. Like, hell yeah. Like, that's way better to me. So I don't want anyone to ever like think that it's me like rooting against this guy, because I don't lose any money if his cards go off the charts. And everybody else cashes out and the market does better. I'm here for it. Like, I'm just a little bit nervous that that's never going to happen. But some guys that I think it is going to happen with, and some guys that I am investing in right now. I'll start with one name that I mentioned a couple episodes ago, but I brought him up to you, and I just really think that he's as safe as it gets. I don't really have any questions on this guy. Like, I have 0 questions. It's really just, can he hit big league pitching? And I think he can. Miguel Vargas of the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
You were interested in the price point.
Yep.
Is the price point, where would you compare that to? And then I'll give my whole lowdown real quick first. Guy.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just say, guys, great bat to ball skills, elite contact rates, and now has unlocked the power. I think we've talked about him in a previous episode, but you unlock the power. You've got the ability to hit sub 20% strikeout rate throughout his minor league career. You're seeing the exit velos up there. Like, he's posting top 10 percentile exit velos now. So I'm like, okay, high contact rate, elite exit velos, and can spray the ball over the field. He crushes every pitch too. I mean, 850 OPS against fastballs, curveballs, sliders, changeups. You can't pitch to him. And that's in Double-A as a 22-year-old. He's 21 for a majority of the season. And this guy's special. And he's a third baseman. And the Dodgers are loaded. That's the one spot where a prospect could break in. Like Turner's departing. That's a spot where a prospect could break in. Muncie's going to be on the shelf for a while. I have him making his debut next year. Even if he doesn't really change my optimism on him, but he could be the future of that position for the Dodgers moving forward.
Yeah, and at 200, I think it's $250 gets you a PSA 10 version of his auto, Bowman Chrome first. So you're not pouring a whole lot into him right now. And like you said, his numbers bear out a guy that's pretty special player. And with a clear path to the starting third base role in LA, that's a dream scenario. So
yeah, right.
Yeah. That's a good find. I mean, I think you're seeing his prices creep up a little bit. Even as raw cards, they're kind of not going for, but people are asking 150, 175 ish. I think you could probably get it for around 90 to 100 in reality. But still at that price point, that's kind of where last spring-ish, not last spring, was it? When I started buying Moreno, maybe
Yeah,
it was more like even July.
I was giving him
right
out
around
like
that
last year, but I think I was
85.
really on you to start doing it last summer.
Started buying him around 85 to $90, and now he's up to 125, 130 just for raw. Yeah, I think Vargas at a raw card of around 80 to $90 is a great buy. And then if you just are one of those guys that likes the slab version, go ahead and drop the $250 on it and get you one that you can hold on to, and you might see escalate pretty rapidly over the next couple of years.
So question for you off of that real quick before you give us your buy. Let's say I could get a lot of like 3 Bowman Chrome autos of Miguel Vargas, or I could get the PSA 10. What's the better? And I know it depends on the quality card. Let's say they look fine. They check out to me. Like that's what most people are gonna say. Yeah, they look fine. What's the better play there?
It depends. I mean, it really depends on the quality of the card and how.
Say it's a solid looking card. Like you feel good.
Yeah. I mean, then you're taking the card. You are, for me, I'd be putting it aside, waiting for
You're buying the one PSA 10, or you're
PSA,
the 3.
no, I would. It depends. If like I could put my eyeballs on the cards, and the centering looked great, the surfaces look great, and I'm like, okay, I mean, as far as I can tell with my naked eye, like I think this is going to gem out. Like then I would lean more towards the raw card version because there's greater margin, built in there. Like then I would wait for PSA prices to come down. I'd send all 3 of them off. That would be another, $25 a card. So you're 75 into it there. But then, if they do come back at 10s, you've made at least $100, if not more, already right off the bat. But again, it's not like that's a risky game. You buy the PSA, like you buy the raws and they all come back PSA 9s. Those cards aren't going up a whole lot. They're going to be a little bit more than the raw version. And so like, you're not going to see a huge influx in the value of those cards once they're graded. So, but at the same time, like I like to buy raw cards. I like to buy lots because I'm in a space where I can, maybe I'm not trying to make, 3 or 4x, but I can turn around and make, 30-40% on the card pretty quickly. And so like that to me is just is kind of more my style. I'd rather buy in bulk and then sell a bunch than necessarily buy something that I'm just hoping that it grades out super high.
100%. I totally agree with that. And
so there's those cards that like you're like, I just really believe in this guy and I don't want to mess with it, and I want the PSA 10 version, and I'm going to put it aside. I don't have to mess with it anymore. I'm not selling it for another 5 years anyway, because I really want to see his trajectory and see it play out. So there's always you just do different things depending on the situation. It's really context driven. So,
and that's Vargas for me. I'm going PSA 10, playing it safe. That's how much I believe in him. Who are you believing in right now? Who's one of your buys as we kind of rattle through our 3 buys?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the Tucker buy. Again, 2 Bowman First Chrome greens and then 2 Bowman First Chrome Sky Blues. Got all 4 of those cards for a couple, like $185, which is just a totally fantastic buy. Super excited about that. Bought an O'Neill Cruz Bowman Chrome First Auto
Love that.
for raw for about $90. Super excited about that. I love him. You've talked about him a bunch.
Rare
Tweeted
mistake
about
by
him.
the Dodgers. Rare mistake by the Dodgers. He's a
Yeah.
Dodger in the card. He's a Dodger.
I
in the
know.
card.
I know. You tweeted about him. You tweeted about his exit velos in comparison to some other guys. Going to be just a big stick for the Pirates. And then, of course, I bought a Josh Young lot. I bought 18 of his Bowman First Chromes for about $100, $110.
Wow.
So, I'm $6 into each card or whatever.
I'm really glad you brought him up
Yeah.
because one, I love the adjustments he made. I mean, he had an insane year.
He destroyed Triple A.
Destroyed, and he's a guy that mashed all the way through college.
Yeah.
And he was scary in
I
college.
saw him a lot at Baylor playing against Texas Tech.
Yeah, he was a freak. He was a freak.
Yeah.
He used to yell at himself in the batter's box and stuff. Like super intense guy. It wasn't a bad year, just the power didn't really make its way out there.
Mm-hmm.
He's not really a guy that I would say hits the ball as hard as you would expect. Like it's not off the charts exit velos, but he was always a guy that just naturally gets carry. And I think he was struggling when he went to Wood to kind of get the ball to fly off the bat. I think before he could really get away with it without back spinning baseballs, he could hit line drives and they'd get out. But his line drive approach turned into more of just being a line drive, singles, doubles guy. And you can't be that if you're Josh Young because you're not a speedster. You're a third baseman who has to hit for power. So he made the adjustment, kind of like I was saying with Vargas, but even more so because he's got a little bit more physical in position and just got better at lifting the ball, staying in his back hip, getting more carry, letting the ball travel more, and having more of that home run approach. And it worked really well for him. And it didn't come at any expense of his bat to ball skills. He's very similar profile-wise to Vargas, so I'm a big fan of his. And guess what, man? Another guy with a direct path to third base for a team that I'm not saying they're winning the World Series, but they're a lot more entertaining and a lot more relevant. And that's going to be, he could be the third wheel to a very exciting infield with Marcus Semien, Corey Seager. And I think Young's going to be big league ready. He's probably going to crack unless they pull the, service time manipulation, work on your defense thing until he's ready magically 3 weeks later. That's where I'm expecting him to be, right? So you've got another guy that's going to be in the big leagues in a lineup where, he's going to be batting after or sandwiched between all-stars and be on a team that, I wasn't watching the Texas Rangers last year. I'll be watching the Texas Rangers next year. And Josh Young's one of the reasons why, but it's also that superstar duo up the middle. And I think that's something that matters. So another guy that has a direct path there, and I'm excited.
Super cheap. He's super cheap right now.
I think people are still sleeping on him. I don't think a lot of people realize how good his season was last year.
No.
It was special. But a guy who is blocked, who maybe doesn't have this direct of a path to the big leagues right now, to his position, is MJ Melendez. And MJ Melendez is someone I really like as a hitter. I like him as a catcher. And I mean, the guy led the minor leagues in home runs with 41. He hit 40 freaking bombs. He was miserable, horrible in 2019. And he'll be the first to tell you that. Made some major adjustments, made some major tweaks to his approach as well. Started hunting pitches differently, fixed a lot of his pre-swing movements. And, this was a high school guy that was drafted in the second round over slots. So 2020 being gone, or not happening, hurt him a lot. And then we saw 2019 in the bad season that also on that same team, that was a Royals organizational thing. Because you know how bad Nick Prado was on that same high A team too? Nobody in the system could hit. It was a system-wide issue. He raked this year, and he's for real. And he just won the home run derby over in the Bahamas as well, which is pretty funny where they hit the ball into the water. But it's cool. He is special. He's got it up here too. His dad's a head coach at FIU. Florida International University. But I'm just a big fan of the way he approaches the game. I really like the swing. He goes foul pole to foul pole with home runs. He's the kind of guy that can inside out one and hit it out the other way. The bat plays. Salvi's in the way. And they're talking about getting him reps at third, but they also said that about Bobby Witt. I don't know necessarily what they're going to do, and that does concern me a little bit. But at the end of the day, he hit 41 home runs. He's going to continue to mash. And even if he's in the minor leagues, he's going to either force his way up to the bigs or he's going to get traded to somewhere else where he will play right away. And I think that bat's going to play big time. And he might actually out-hit the catching position. And if he doesn't, he'll be one of the best hitting catchers in baseball because I think he's that special with the stick. So MJ, another cheap guy. I think you have
another guy you can get for like $75 raw. That's a Bowman Chrome First Auto. You can get colored variations for pretty cheap. You can get, I was just looking, his purple was like $300. So I mean, you can get him at a much cheaper price in comparison to some of the guys we've already talked about, obviously. But I think anytime you can get a player of his ability kind of in that, raw card under $100, $50 to $100 range, buy it, stash it, man. That's not a bad price for a guy that has superstar potential.
Totally. I totally agree. Who's your third and final buy?
What was it? So I gave you,
Tucker?
I think Tucker, Cruz, and Young.
You gave me Josh. So now I got my last guy. Another third baseman, but I think he can move to corner outfield. And someone who really put it together too. Somebody that simplified things too. I mean, that's the big thing that I'm looking for, right? Like if you had swing and miss issues and now you broke out this year, do I see a tangible adjustment? Mark Vientos. I talked about him in a couple episodes too. I was so floored with what he did this year. Another guy whose power just foul pole to foul pole. A little bit of swing and miss, but what I like the most is he pulverizes velo too. He hit breaking balls well, but he hits 95 miles per hour and up as well as anybody in the minor leagues. He crushed fastballs as well as anybody in the minor leagues. But when you see that translate to high-end velo, well, that's all you see in the big leagues. No one hits the hammers, right? The nasty sliders and stuff, no one hits those. You got to hit the fastballs. And if you can hit the fastballs, you'll have a good baseline of success. And Mark Vientos had one of the highest home run to fly ball rates in the minor leagues, meaning every fly ball almost that he hit left the yard. The highest was my good friend Griffin Conine, who had the most ridiculous home run to fly ball rate I've ever seen in my life, 48%. So he's just got to hit the ball more frequently. And that's another guy that I'm biasly buying. But Mark Vientos is in that same boat of like when he gets it in the air, it's gone. And now he's getting it in the air more and just getting it more. And that was the key for him. And those types of guys, once they start making more consistent contact, it's over. He was never a huge swing and miss guy. He was just hitting the ball on the ground too much on top of above average swing and miss rates, right? If you're going to strike out 28% of the time, that's fine. You can get away with that and be a superstar, but you need to hit the ball in the air and hit home runs. If you're striking out 28% of the time and you're hitting ground balls 52% of the time, you have no margin for error with the balls you're hitting in the air. They got to leave the yard almost every single time you connect. So that's the big thing. He cut down on the ground ball rate, cut down on the K rate, and boosted the home run to fly ball rate. So he's hitting more fly balls and a higher percentage of the fly balls are home runs. What else do you want to see here? I mean, like that's everything for me. It is a question where he's going to kind of
another guy that's super cheap. I mean, just $175. I think it's his PSA 10.
What?
Again,
That's
Bowman First Chrome. I just bought 6 of his just Bowman Chrome First for $20. So you're looking at being $3 to $4 into each card. So another guy you can snag for really cheap. And you're going to see some nice return over the next year and a half or 2 years. So definite buy.
Absolutely. I didn't even realize he was that cheap, T. And the craziest thing is that, I'm not sure if he's totally going to slot in for the Mets, but he could. I mean, like he's closer to big league ready than Brett Beatty. And, he finished the year in AAA. I don't know how the defense is going to play at third. He could play corner outfield. But, the Mets, if they're frustrated if you're playing JD Davis, I don't think he's worse defensively at third base than JD Davis. I think the Mets might not be done. The Mets might even ship Vientos out in a larger package. Who cares at that point? Because if he's shipped out in a larger package, he's starting in the big leagues right away. If he's not shipped out, he's going to play for the New York Mets, which this is probably the most relevant New York Mets team we've seen in a while. So this is a good situation regardless. And I'm all in on Vientos as well. With a guy that, the bat's just always going to play. And if he shot with those big league baseballs too, if they undeaden them too, it's just going to be different for him. And that's another guy I'm really excited about. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, when you see a guy that has, his ability has changed, he's gotten better. You see a situation where he's in a large market, you see a low price in his cards. That's literally like the perfect storm. Like, go snatch him up. So
how important is the market? Like to take, add to that a little bit as we wrap up here. How important is the market? Because you see some guys, we talk about Luis Rodriguez, the episode we did with the Dodgers, international free agent in a big market for the Dodgers, price off the charts. But you look at a Mark Vientos who had an insane season, or a Miguel Vargas who had an insane season in the same system, and the prices aren't off the charts.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that market plays just a super significant role. I mean, obviously it does with anything. Like, if you have more eyeballs on the player, that's more potential collectors, buyers, etc. So it's always a good thing. It's never, I don't think it's really a bad thing. But we've already talked about Kelenic. He's in Seattle. He's not in a big market. His card prices are doing just fine.
Traded away from New York.
Yeah.
Like Vientos might.
Yep. Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, if the player is special, if his ability is proving to be something that is attracting, eyeballs, if he's like what you've said, basically what Vientos has been able to do, what Vargas has been able to do, what Young has been able to do, guys making tweaks and their swings, they're getting better. I don't think the market is all that important. I don't think it can hurt. And so obviously, especially when you're talking about guys like, Shohei, and another thing is like when you start bringing in international markets, it just creates more buyers. And of course that's a good thing. And so, but at the same time, it's weird. Like, the card space, it doesn't necessarily mean all that much in the market itself. So just from my observations.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think it's a nice little icing on the cake thing, but also I think it's really important to see the direct path to the big leagues, because that's just the eyeballs across baseball, right? Yeah. Even if it's in a small market, direct path to the big leagues, no one's blocking O'Neal Cruz. He can go out in there and hit his mammoth home runs that everyone's going to start noticing, because he's already putting up exit velos that you don't see from anybody, right? So like we're going to see O'Neal Cruz doing things in the major leagues. When you throw on quick pitch at the end of the night, they're going to say, look at this bomb O'Neal Cruz hit. Like, that's the most important thing, right? It's just being on the field at the big league level and not being blocked. And that's kind of what I talked about that a lot.
Markets have become almost like, the market is homogenous in a sense. Like, there's just, you have access to information like that. So it's not like, oh, well, you want him in a big market city because then he's gonna have more. Well, everyone across the world is seeing, highlights you
can't escape it.
They happen.
You can't escape it in today's world.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't make a huge deal. But when you have a guy that's in a bigger market, then you have guys that you have more people attached to them on a personal level and want to buy. And so that's the bonus. It's not necessarily eyeballs. It's just that you have a lot more, people are far more attached to the player, which is a good thing.
It's
so like, that's where it benefits card prices.
It's true. It's like the psychology. It's one thing to be like, I like that player. It's another thing to be like, I like that player so much, I want to purchase his baseball card.
Yeah.
I want to spend my money to own a card, a relic of his. That's where it kind of stands out. And I think that's kind of what you're betting on here. So I'm really excited for our next episode, where we're going to talk about international free agency and also the two different pricing points of the big league versus the prospect, and why you kind of got to put them in two different buckets. I think that's two things I'm really excited to dive into with you, and we're going to research over the next week. But this was a fun one as always. Did you guys give away that box, by the way, on your Twitter account yet?
Damn it,
I didn't win. You're supposed to rig those for me.
You weren't eligible. That would have ruined us both. But yeah, we did. That was super fun. I
What'd you give away? Tell
love
them
doing
what you gave away.
giveaways. So we gave a Bowman Chrome Mega Box, which is a super fun product. I threw in 100 sleeves. I threw in 35 top loaders. But we love giving stuff away. We gave away a Bowman Chrome, or not a Bowman, but a Bowman Hobby Box to kind of kick off our new Twitter account. So we'll do giveaways, especially when we hit big milestones. We're up to 800 followers and going for 1,000. So once we get to 1,000, we'll do another one.
What's the handle?
Wildcards_LLC.
And a really important point on that is, you guys are giving away big time stuff. I mean, that is big time stuff. I see like golden auctions. I follow them on Instagram. That's like what they're giving away. They're giving away like a not even that, like a blaster box, right? And your chances of winning a giveaway there are fractional compared to this. I mean, I'm hoping that the chances of these people winning your giveaways will be fractional because you'll have so many followers. But to be honest, right now, like it's grown a lot. It's been awesome to see. But like get in now because you got a chance. You got like a 1 to maybe 0.3% chance to get something, which you don't really get anywhere else. I mean, you're looking at a 1 in 10,000 chance in most of these other places. So I can't believe all the giveaways you guys do. I think it's fair if it randomly selects me. I think I win. Like I deserve it.
If you're randomly selected, I'll give it to you. But we can't rig it.
No, I think. But what I want to do also with all I'm asking for Christmas is a 2019 Bowman draft box because that freaking class is just not real. So looking forward to seeing what you give the kids for Christmas, and we'll talk about that also.
We got to talk about 2019 versus 2020.
So we got a lot of good talking points.
Yeah.
And all right, see what you got your kids and what the kids got. Daddy T for Christmas. What are you asking for? Did you ask for more Mark Vientos?
Yeah, I said I want money to buy cards, and so that's all I need.
There you go.
Good.
There you go. Well, we got a lot of topics for next time, and Kendall will be back with us. Really excited to get back after it again. Thank you for sharing your early Christmas Eve with me, and thank you to all of you viewers out there for sharing your either Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or right after that with us. And we look forward to talking cards with you next week.
Yep. Sounds good. Merry Christmas, everyone.